you went wrong and making sure you're keeping that in mind for the next time you play. So right now it's 1:32 p.m., which means we will move on to the discussion part of this stream. So what I'm going to do is I am going to turn the music up just a little bit, the ambient music we got going on. I'm going to take a break from playing Osu. If you're just here for the gameplay, then you know I highly recommend you stay, because I think this part is going to be the most informative and meaningful part of the stream today. But if you are just here for the gameplay, I'll be done with this part in about 30 minutes if you want to pop back in whenever that's over. But what we're going to talk about right now is how to get into the more advanced mods, and in particular when I say advanced mods, I mean hard rock, because hard rock is a mod that is very taxing on your fundamentals, and therefore I would consider it a mod that most people won't be able to get into until they're around the range where they can start full comboing 6-star songs. And once you can do that, I think then you can consider making plays on hard rock. I think you can pass hard rock plays before 6-star full combos, but I think if you want to make good hard rock plays, you probably have to be around that level. Maybe 5.5 star FCs is better goal. So that's what we're going to talk about for this segment, and it's going to be how to get into those kinds of mods. I'll also be discussing how to get into hidden, so keep that in mind. But let's jump right into it. So one of the reasons why hard rock is such a taxing mod for your fundamentals is because it comes down to an issue of increasing the difficulty of a lot of parts of playing the game that are fundamental and therefore muscle memory, and that makes it extremely difficult to start learning the mod, just because you have to go through that long and painful process of building up the muscle memory. And that's not something that's easy, that's something that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. So I'm going to talk about the parts of songs that it makes harder. It increases the approach rate, which is how fast the notes, how long you have to react to the notes when they appear on your screen. So it gives you less reaction time. It increases the OD, which is overall difficulty, and that's the time in which you have to have an accurate hit. So it makes it harder to be accurate, and it decreases the circle size, which means you have to have better aim. It also changes the patterning of the maps, but most of the time I think that is to the player's benefit, because it removes some of the technical difficulty of some maps. It makes the patterns a little bit easier in my opinion. So there is kind of a saving grace there for hard rock. And also another reason why it can be really difficult to get into is because it increases HP drain, which means you will die a lot on songs if you're trying to get into hard rock. And the reason why I would recommend waiting till you are around the 6-star level as a player before getting into hard rock is because all of those skills that I listed up until HP drain are fundamental aspects of the game. They're all things that you have to take time and you have to work towards building muscle memory for. Fundamental aspect of the game is something that is less technical, and I say technical in the sense that it is a mechanic of the game. It's a technique that you can pick up. It's kind of like Osu is not a very technical game in the sense that it has very unique mechanics. The only real mechanics that are in the game are sliders and spinners, and obviously the regular hit circles, and that's basically the entire mechanics of the game. But you can, there are some songs that will take those three different aspects and put them in specific patterns or specific ways that makes the game technical from that perspective. So basically a fundamental skill is anything that isn't technical, and all of the things that hard rock does is it makes it much more difficult to play from a fundamental standpoint. So how do you get into learning hard rock if the issue is fundamentals? Well, again, this is something that I've discussed before on my stream. It's entirely, almost exclusively, an issue of practice and muscle memory, because they are the fundamental aspects, and it's not technical. It's not something that you can fix just by thinking about the mechanics of the game. It's something that you have to understand from a physical standpoint. You have to be able to physically do the things. That makes it much, much harder to get into the mod. So if you're looking to become a hard rock player, I would say the only exception to this rule, if you're wanting to get into hard rock, this kind of barrier that I've set of be able to do 6 stars before you try to do hard rock, is if you want to exclusively play nothing but hard rock. Then you can push into doing hard rock, I think, because you're specializing in the mod, and you can learn the specific muscle memories of that specialization. It's just your play will also suffer in other areas. You will find it very hard to do no mod if you're so used to reading AR10, if you're used to the different timings, the different patterns. No mod will be much more technical, and that will cause you troubles. But you can specialize into hard rock before this point. It's just I don't necessarily recommend it. So a lot of being able to get in, some tips that I could say for getting into hard rock is play higher approach rates, first off. So actually, ironically, a good starting point is DT, because double time on AR8 will increase the DT to, I think it's 9.7, and that's very close to AR10. It's not quite there, and you'll definitely notice a difference when you make the switch from understanding AR 9.7 to AR10. But it can help you get the muscle memory down to start learning hard rock. So if you're looking to push into hard rock, I definitely recommend you learning AR 9.7, so DT to AR8. It's very useful. Some other aspects are playing maps with lower circle size to work on your aim. Playing aim heavy maps just in general, because you want to build that aim muscle memory. Let me answer some questions from chat really quick, just because I got sidetracked. Is it wise to use different skins for hard rock and no mod? That depends on your preference. To some extent, yes, I think it can be. To some extent, I think it can be a detriment. It's all up to you. For me, personally, I do not. I like to stick with the same mod, just because, unless I'm doing HDHR. If I'm doing HDHR, sometimes I'll change it, but that's because of Hidden, and I'll talk more about Hidden in a little bit. Right now, I just want to talk a little bit about hard rock. This violin is so cool. Yeah, it's 2 cellos, if you've actually ever heard of them. They're, I think they're brothers, actually. I'm not sure, but really cool artists. They make really great music. 9.67. Yes, it is a cover of Thunderstruck by AC/DC. So, what are some other things that you can do to get into AR10? It's just going to be exceptionally difficult. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of practice, and the same thing that I always recommend is constructively criticize yourself on everything that you do. Make sure you're paying attention to what's going on when you're playing, and you're focusing on the fundamental aspects that will help you improve. That's another thing that I should mention, is when you're trying to learn hard rock in particular, because it's so fundamentally taxing, if you want to get into the mod, you absolutely have to practice the fundamentals. So whenever you practice to try and learn this mod, go into the songs that you're doing with the mindset of, okay, I want to learn this specific fundamental aspect of gameplay. And I feel like the specific aspects that apply to hard rock in particular are pretty much all of them except for streaming. Streaming is not something that really shows up in hard rock until later on, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But aim, accuracy, to a certain extent speed. Those are all things that will help you, if you're focusing explicitly on those things, will help you get into hard rock. Those are things that I would highly recommend. By the way, pick one of those. Pick whichever one you feel like that you struggle the most with, and focus on that when you're moving into hard rock. A lot of times it's also players moving into hard rock for the first time will have issues with snapping. Think about snapping a little bit better, so think about being more efficient with your movements and making sure you're focusing explicitly on the notes that are popping up. And let's see, I had another thing I wanted to talk about. Oh yes, so an interesting aspect of hard rock that I think is actually kind of cool is that if you do practice no mod, you will find it easier to do hard rock the longer you go on. Which is why I say that the higher in skill you get, the less taxing hard rock becomes, because the better you are fundamentally. And because it is a mod that is so difficult to do from a fundamental perspective, improving on your no mod universally will make you better at hard rock to a certain degree. It won't make you like a hard rock god, you will have to play it to actually understand hard rock, but if you have good no mod, you will probably not struggle too much with hard rock. It's just an issue of being fundamentally good enough to play hard rock. There is like a barrier, a certain cutoff that you have to get past to start looking into it. So the next thing I'll talk about is Hidden a little bit. I want to discuss Hidden as a mod in particular because it's a lot different from hard rock. It's not something that is fundamentally different. It doesn't fundamentally change the aspects of how you play the game. It doesn't make you aim harder. It doesn't increase the songs, like decrease the circle size. It doesn't make it harder to be accurate. None of that stuff. It's just the notes disappear, which means it takes almost a different style of reading to be able to understand. Hey, what's wrong? How's it going, man? Welcome to the stream. But, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in my stream where I was discussing the fact that some people will have a very easy time getting into Hidden just because it meshes well with their style of reading, and some people will have a lot of trouble getting into Hidden. Some people, it won't feel natural at all for, I'm one of those people. My style of play is very much based around looking at the note and seeing where it is, and if I can't look at the note, obviously that kind of like throws me off my rhythm, you know, it throws me out of my element, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to actually do the mod. So Hidden is a mod that I struggle with a lot. The cool thing about Hidden, though, that is kind of in contrast to hard rock, is because it's not such a fundamentally taxing mod, it's a very easy mod to get into at lower levels of gameplay. You could start learning Hidden as a 3-star player. I don't recommend that, by the way, I don't recommend that, but you could do it realistically, and it probably wouldn't hurt you all that much. But I do think there is a certain level where you want to have muscle memory down enough before you go into Hidden, just because it can change, because it changes the way that you read. It might negatively affect you in the future if you're trying to do hard rock or no mod plays or even DT plays and you're not used to the specific style of reading and you have built your muscle memory slightly different when it comes to reading. So I would actually recommend a good difficulty level to get into Hidden or start practicing Hidden if you want to. You don't have to, of course, but if you want to, is around 4 stars. Because, you know, again, I feel like that's a level where the game starts almost, in a sense, is around 4 stars, because that's when you start getting jumps, that's when you start getting minor streams, it's when you start getting the more difficult aspects of gameplay as opposed to just patterns, because pre-4 stars, almost all of the songs that you're playing are purely pattern based, because you don't have the muscle memory built down to do jumps or streams or things like that. So I feel like Hidden, 4 stars is a good place to start learning Hidden, just because that's when the game really like ramps off, and you start actually really playing the game in a sense. But again, because it's not as fundamentally taxing, it's something that's pretty easy to learn. It's just a matter of discovering a style of reading a map that works well with you with Hidden. And I would recommend, if you're somebody like me who has to be looking at the notes, to have the best level of focus and to read the map the most effectively, because that's what I do. If you're somebody like me, I would recommend trying to play songs where the focus is to pay attention to the map as a whole, as opposed to the individual notes. Now, I'm not saying I want you to look at patterns as a whole, because I think that can negatively affect people's ability to jump. Some people it helps, some people it doesn't. But you want to be reading less intensely when it comes to the notes that you're supposed to hit. And what I mean when I say that is you want to have less time spent looking at the note and that you're trying to hit right now, and more time spent looking at the note that's coming up. So maybe that's a useful tip that some people could use for getting into learning hidden, is spend less time looking at the note that you have to hit and spend more time looking at the next note that you have to hit, as opposed to the one that's coming up right now. As for a HDHR, again, it's obviously, I mean, it's both of the mods, so that you're gonna have both aspects of gameplay. You're gonna have to learn how to do the kind of sort of unique idea of reading hidden, because reading hidden is more of a unique style of gameplay, and the fundamental taxation that comes with hard rock. I recommend practicing each of the mods individually first before you jump into practicing both of them combined, because you want to have those skills down. You want to have the skill of being able to read the unique aspects of hidden, and you want to have the fundamental abilities that are required from you to play hard rock, and then you got to combine those. So I would recommend learning each mod separately before you jump into trying to do both. Some people find it easier to read both at the same time. If you're one of those people, then, you know, I mean, do whatever suits you. Do what you feel comfortable with. But my advice for the majority of people is learn each mod individually before you jump in and trying to do that one. And I'm gonna take a small break from talking, so I'm doing it for like 10 minutes. Gonna grab a really quick drink, and then I'm gonna come back and I'll discuss stuff like DT and flashlight, and maybe easy a little bit. I don't really know flashlight easy, I mean, very well. But we'll see if I can't maybe talk about that some. Puzzle, do you play DT? I don't remember seeing you playing it now that I think about it. I don't play it very often, but I play it sometimes. I used to be a really big DT player, but I to be honest, I got kind of frustrated with people calling me a farmer. So I decided to prove them wrong, and I switched to no mod. And I became a no mod player, and now I'm getting into HDHR. Mostly, I actually originally wanted to be an HDHR player, even when I was a DT player. I just enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of fun. But it's something that's hard to do. You have to get pretty good to do HDHR from a fundamental perspective, unless you specialize in it. And I didn't want to specialize in HDHR. I wanted to be better at no mod first. But yes, I do play DT sometimes. Alright, so DT. Let's talk a small bit about DT. So, DT is a little bit different than these mods, and it's somewhat similar to hard rock in the sense that it's more fundamentally taxing than no mod, but it's much easier from a technical perspective, and there's less accuracy involved. So I feel like overall it's a lot easier to get into from a relative perspective, because you don't have the double wombo or the triple wombo combo even. I think it's 3 aspects of hard rock that make it really hard to learn, of increased HP drain, increased approach rate, and higher OD. Because when you get all 3 of those things combined, then it's just, it becomes really difficult to get at the level where you can fundamentally do all of those things and do them well. You have to be really good at reading, you have to be really good at aim, you have to be really good at timing. With DT, to a certain extent, you do have to be good at all of those things, but because you don't have that like triple wombo combo pushing you back away from improving to that level, I feel like it's much easier to get into as a mod, and it's something that you can also start doing around the 4-star level. Sort of like hidden, if you feel like you're around the level of 4 stars and DT is maybe something that you want to learn. That's about the time when I would say, yeah, that's probably, you know, you could start learning it then if you wanted to. You could put it off a little bit, you could do it a little bit earlier. I mean, it's all up to you. But that would be my recommendation personally, is around 4-star level, is when you start learning some DT. It is a mod that, like I said, it's kind of fundamental in the sense that it's very much speed-based, and to a certain extent it will be aim-based. It won't be if you're doing, like, the level of 4-star DT songs, because you're going to be DTing pattern-based maps as opposed to aim-heavy maps, because no, like, 2 to 3-star map has jumps. So you'll be learning more patterns and speed as opposed to aim, but once you get into the higher DT difficulties, it definitely becomes an aim mod, in my opinion. There will be lots of times where you will have maps that become very intense on aim just because you have to have the speed to hit the jumps. Yeah, Lemon Bits, that's kind of the thing I got tired of, is because I don't actually think DT is as bad as everybody thinks it is. I do think it's a more of a viable map. How big of a jump is it from 70 performance points to 100 performance points? That's a really good question, actually. I'll have to think about it. That's a really good question. I mean, if you want to talk in terms of time span, it'll probably take you a couple months. So in that sense, it is pretty big. But in some other senses, it's not that big. But let's think of it from like a percentage level, right? So let's say 100 performance points is your representation of, or 70 performance points is a representation of your skill. Increasing to 100 performance points almost takes double the amount of, or half of that amount of performance points. So in that sense, it's like a 40% increase. I'd say that's a pretty big jump in a representation of skill. Of course, performance points isn't necessarily a direct measurement of your skill, but it is a representation to a certain extent. And because of that, I would say the jump is pretty big. I mean, a 40% about increase in your play. That doesn't take a lot of. That's not something that happens really fast. 299 plays? Ouch. Almost there, man. 197? That's pretty good. I think my first 100 performance point play was actually a DT song. I can't remember what it was though. I remember my first like play that took me forever to beat was I DT'd River Flows in You, and I got like 176 from it. And it's like the only one that I really remember. And then I remember my first 200 play, and I remember my first 300 play. All of those were DT, actually. My first 300 play was DT. You're really bad at F-Sing maps that are greater than 500 notes? Yeah, I was too for a while. It's usually an issue of consistent, like, you just haven't practiced the endurance style of maps long enough. Because there's a lot that goes into endurance. They're usually worth a lot, and I think that's validated because there's a lot more stress and a lot more pressure that goes into full comboing longer maps. Plus consistency, in my opinion, is more of a skill than like any other aspect of the game. Like if you have good consistency, even if you don't have the best aim, like maybe somebody has better aim and better speed than you, but if you're a more consistent player, I think you're a much better player. It's just a matter of practicing longer maps and getting used to the different aspects, because they're going to be more technical and less aim heavy. 2, they're going to be more stressful, they're going to be more mentally taxing. And 3, it's going to be more of a matter of endurance as well. Not just mentally, but physically. In the sense of what you can do and staying consistent. Anyways, we got